Okay, wow, thanks for coming in this horrible weather. Maybe you can invent some technology to do something about this. Thank you for coming today. I know we've had a lot of great panels and a lot of great experiences here in New York, so I just want to welcome you again or tell you we're happy to have had you and to host the Smart Cities Conference here in New York. And I think, for those of you who are still around and want to hear a little bit more about New York, I think, for us, it's really important to phrase and sort of frame what's going on in the world right now with what is going on in the world. I think for those of us who are Americans, this is a really challenging time. You saw a pretty upsetting vote in DC down there yesterday. And so as we as city officials look at what's going on nationally and internationally, having a gathering of people who are smart policy folks and innovators and really actual problem solvers who are interested in issues like economic mobility, responding to climate change, and applying real facts and real data to real solutions, is really important for us here at the city, especially when we have a national debate and sort of a national leadership that is quite challenging. So I think we are pretty excited that New York will ultimately, we think, become a beacon of really what a smart city is and should be, and will lead both the United States and hopefully really contribute to the global dialogue. I think it's fair to say there is so much disruption and upheaval around us right now. We are at the cusp of an extraordinary technological revolution that's already happening, but it's really turning whole sectors of the economy in some respects upside down, and it's definitely changing the composition of our workforce on the kind of scale that you really typically have only seen once in a century. And I think for a lot of people, this tech revolution can evoke the image of like an Amazon fulfillment center where there are robots picking and packing, and there's no human beings anywhere, much less than a paycheck. And so those are very troubling issues for those of us. But it's not just about unskilled jobs probably being replaced by robots. It's having a much broader effect on the economy as a whole. I spent over a decade on Wall Street, and I can tell you that if you look out on trading floors today, you see obviously way fewer human beings as more and more trading is being driven by logarithms and algorithms and other program solutions that are probably more precise and certainly faster than human trading. So technology and these disruptions are really hitting all parts of our economy. I think for a lot of regular New Yorkers, they see this a lot most viscerally in the retail sector. A lot of why people come to New York City is to walk around and go shopping and sort of experience what it's like to be in New York. But again, as more and more people are buying things online, there's less brick and mortar retail, and that also is going to have a very profound effect on how people experience cities as well as on our employment base. And again, this transition, this disruption, whatever you want to call it, is impacting manufacturing because obviously companies require less people, less jobs to square foot ratios, and it's taking fewer and fewer skilled people to operate all of this fantastic technology. So this is a big, big issue which we need to unpack, but the point is that it has impacts on all of the asset classes and in all of the sectors in which New York City is strong. I read something the other day. McKinsey now estimates that roughly half of all the activities that people are paid to do, half of what people are paid to do, could potentially be automated adapting currently demonstrated technologies in just 10 or 15 years. That's what current technology is going to allow us to do in terms of reshaping and resizing our workforce. And in current dollars, that's about $15 trillion in wages. So just think about what that means as the nature of work changes and what that means in terms of people's earning capacity. So for us as policymakers, how are people and families going to be able to maintain, or quite frankly even attain, the kind of economic security and quality of life that we should rightfully expect in the 21st century? And so that to us is really the challenge of our time. So how do we harness these disruptions, these changes, these radical technologies, not just to improve productivity and to grow amazing companies, but how are we going to use that technology to level the playing field and to solve big problems, which I know you've been talking about all week: aging infrastructure, climate change, growing inequality. And as I said, we're not seeing that at the national level. We really are not. We're talking about a jobs plan that is about building walls to keep people out or putting people back into coal mines. That is not a jobs plan. right? We're talking about corporate tax reform, which is about eliminating inheritance tax or slashing corporate taxes, but not creating incentives for R&D and technology. So it is all upside down. But that's why thank God for cities and thank God for New York City. I think we have a quote, a good one, an old one that shows it still is true. Oh my God, look at what is going on out there, crazy. Okay, here's the point. Cities have always been and will continue to be the center of the knowledge economy. It's where having a brain still matters. And I would argue that no city has more brain power than New York City, and people like Updike said it best and really capture it. Our workforce, our people are multi-talented, they're diverse, they're multidisciplined. This is a city where it actually makes a difference that a coder occasionally reads a novel, or that you would actually go to the Met or go to a concert. We are a culture of innovation and interaction and intersection across sectors like none other in the world. I mean, it's just true that if you work in Silicon Valley, you do not collide with or interact with other sectors in the way we do here, and where we really applaud and support the creative economy to such a degree. So for us, again, what do we want to do to make our city the best innovative city and smartest city? We want to build a smarter and more connected city. We want to build a smarter and more resilient workforce to deal with these changes. And we want to make really strategic investments both in the places and the early stage companies that share these values and will continue to generate jobs for the new economy. So let me talk quickly about what I think a smart city actually looks like. I think if you're not a New Yorker, this may not be so obvious to you, but we are a city that is getting increasingly diffuse. We are no longer a city that has two central business districts. And it is our job to make sure that as the city becomes more diffuse, we simultaneously make it more connected. So first and foremost, that means making affordable broadband access for every community. It means providing a network of the fastest free municipal Wi-Fi in the world. I'm sure you saw a lot of that this week. And that's what our Link NYC initiative is achieving, on time, on budget, in fact, probably a little ahead of schedule. It also means making sure that we have free Wi-Fi for our public housing residents, and ultimately really affordable choices both for business and for every New Yorker who needs access to high-speed internet. We also have to invest in our physical transportation. We have to make sure that our transportation maps to the new New York, right? The subway system was built when we had a hub and spoke. You went to work in Midtown and then you took your subway out into the boroughs in order to go home and be with your family. That's not the new New York. So we have an obligation to connect transportation. Just this week, I think you guys saw it, pretty fabulous and totally cool, the new New York City ferry system launched, which is the first time New York City has had a New York City-wide ferry system since 1890 when the city first came together. This is really important for people to experience New York City as a great global coastal city, but also so that people can get from Greenpoint to the Navy Yard down to Brooklyn and not have to go into Manhattan, and really connecting jobs, communities that have been left out of the entire economic growth story, and really letting employers know that they can get their people up and down this coast, which is really, let's face it, where the innovation economy is happening. We have done unbelievable work in terms of expanding our city bike system. And as you may have read, we're now exploring the first really serious streetcar system here in New York. Funny, right? We're using these sort of 19th century types of transportation in order to support a technology-based economy. And we recognize that using those old types of technology, streetcars, ferries, bicycles, but we also need to have really smart technological solutions to help us make those systems run better, right? Old and new. These two things need to work together all the time. Let me talk a little bit about some of how we have been engaging with the civic tech community to do things like help us with the ferry app, help us make sure that City Bike is working properly. We really have engaged, I think, very collaboratively with our open source data approach and our big apps competition. And those folks are putting real innovators in real time to improve fundamental city services. I saw the booth out there, our urban tech hubs. We have one in Grand Central and we have another one right here in the Navy Yard. That's where we're actually providing the space for incubating companies and step-out companies, again, that are focused on solving practical urban problems, right? Whether it's, can we grow lettuce vertically in a city that doesn't have a lot of horizontal space? How are we working through different kinds of technologies to reduce carbon emissions in a very old building stock, right? We're not talking about new buildings, we're talking about dealing with the emissions from our old stock, none of which we want to tear down. So, we're supporting companies like Block Power, Smart Cities. They are in our Grand Central Hub, and they're figuring out exactly how to get those green, healthy technologies to apply to buildings that are on average age 75, 100 years old, so that we can really deal with our long-term climate change goals of reducing emissions 80% by 2050. So this is the point. Our goal is to take all of these ideas, all of these people, all of these entrepreneurs, and have them work hand in hand with the city, because that ultimately we will become their client, they will hire more people, and it becomes a virtuous cycle, and we want people to stay here in New York. But in order to do that, you also have to really think about the workforce. So we are very focused on reskilling and upskilling our workforce to meet this growing demand. We've taken about a $500 million workforce development program that was training people to fix typewriters and flip burgers, and really plugging them into specific industry partnerships that have a heavy focus on technology. Our Tech Talent Pipeline program now has 1,500 students and mid-career adults that go to boot camps and classes that were actually designed by the tech companies in the program so that they have the actual skills they need. Whatever the current technology is, whether you need to know Java or you know how to do full stack web development or robotics or some exposure to AI. Let me tell you something, government bureaucrats don't know how to do that. I can promise you we don't know how to design curricula that will actually give companies the workers they need, but we're smart enough to get those people in the room now and figure out how to pay for that so that kids can get those jobs. And so those 1,500 people are now working at LinkedIn and Google and Facebook, and it's really been what I think of as a new 21st century vocational training model. Our Computer Science for All initiative is also trying to get kids at an earlier age to begin to have those skills so they can compete in the 21st economy. And so we're really thinking about this as a continuum. Lastly, it's New York City. What does everybody talk about all day long? The rent's too damn high. It's all about real estate. And where you're sitting, the Brooklyn Navy Yard is one of the gems in our crowd. We own the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And so we're really focused on what I call a space continuum, and I don't mean that in a Star Trek kind of way, I mean the real estate space continuum. And that's to make sure that a company that has two people sitting in a cubicle in an incubator somewhere knows that they will be able to get the space they need to step out, have below market rent, security that they're not going to be in a building that will become luxury condos, and then not be able to really think about growing and keeping their company here in New York City. We want to make sure that companies that are actually prototyping interesting types of new technology can do it in environments like the Brooklyn Navy Yard or the Brooklyn Army Terminal or some of our other gems. We don't want people just to think great things here. We want people to test them, make them, and bring them to market, because really what other marketplace do you want to be in globally than in New York City? I think, lastly, we would say that this is fundamentally the biggest public-private partnership of all time, right? This is what it means to have a collective reset, to really think about how technology and innovation can be used to solve some of the most pressing urban problems. And how do we do that in a way that promotes a sustainable, more productive, and a more equitable city? This is the work of our time. There's really nothing else any of us should be doing right now. And that can be in many ways, right? Whether it's you're developing hardware like drones and figuring out how to deliver stuff in the densest environment on the planet, or whether it's helping us to make sure that the ferries are getting here on time and that you know when they're going to come, and linking that to a growing, complex, multimodal transportation system. All of these things, you do not want to do it in a suburban office park. You want to do it in New York, because if it works here, it's most likely going to work just about anywhere. So that's a little bit of a crib of the, if you can make it here, you can do it anywhere. But it's true, right? If it's made in New York, if it's thought about in New York, you will ultimately have an incredibly successful company, and we will have a more successful city. So, thank you all for coming here in this crappy day. I hope you're all going to go out and start drinking soon, because this is really the pits. But New York is really the best and greatest city in the world, and we invite you to become part of this community, and thank you very much for being here today. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to the session upstairs, please exit to your left. Now, please welcome co-founder and CEO Emergence, Raj Panu.